of you, you'll pay attention to what you did and you'll do it again. And when the experience finally shows up and you're caught up in the emotions of the experience, those new emotions then inspire you and drive you to believe that it's possible. And you begin to build a neurological network that convinces you now that somehow you have a hand in your destiny. How many people are with me? So then, if you accept this paradigm, just in the littlest way, then you would have to agree then that the quantum model of reality says that your environment is an extension of your mind. That mind and matter are so intimately related, it's almost impossible to distinguish them apart. So if your environment is an extension of your mind, and you truly change your mind, shouldn't there be evidence in your life? I mean, why else would we do it? Shouldn't there be something happening outside of you because of the change you made inside of you? You with me? Now, when we embrace the concept of change, you know, if you're no longer going to think the same way or act the same way or feel the same way, you're not going to make the same choices that lead to the same behaviors, that create the same experiences, that produce the same emotions, that make you feel like who you are. The moment you begin the process, you step into the river of change. Now here's the old self. And here's the new self. And there's a void between the two. And when people begin the process of change, the moment they're no longer going to think like themselves, the moment they're no longer going to act like themselves, complain or blame or make excuses or feel sorry for themselves or judge other people, and the moment they are going to stop the emotions that keep redefining them, they just put their foot in the river. And now here's the problem. The moment that happens, it begins to feel uncomfortable. It begins to feel unfamiliar. It begins to become unpredictable. And all of a sudden, you're in the unknown. And this is the moment where people define themselves. Because the hardest part about change is not making the same choice as you did the day before. And the moment you begin to inhibit those thoughts, choices, behaviors, experiences, and emotions, the body is craving the payoff, which is the emotion that you've become to define as yourself. And now the body's not getting that familiar feeling. And it starts to send a signal back to your brain. And it says, start tomorrow. You're a loser. It's not going to work. You broke a fingernail. Your day is ruined. And those thoughts are the body as the mind, as you'll learn, trying to unseat you. And if you listen to that voice as if it's true, that voice, that thought will lead to the same choice, which will lead to the same behavior, that will create the same experience, that will produce the same emotion, and you will say, this feels right. No, that feels familiar. Crossing the river of change is the biological, neurological, chemical, hormonal, addictive, genetic death of the old self. It is a literal dying of the old self. And people will say to me, Dr. Joe, yeah, but I can't predict my future. I'm in the river of change. Well, the best way to predict your future when you're in the unknown is to create it. And only when you are in the unknown, when you are in that void, if you can begin to become comfortable with it, that the magic happens. So then, we invest enormous amounts of energy in building an identity that's connected to the old self. And where you place your attention, as you'll learn this weekend, is where you place your energy. So if you keep this facade, this ideal of yourself going for an extended period of time, all for the payoff of the feeling that you define as you. Because when you wake up in the morning, the first thing you do is you wake up and then you go, oh, where's the feeling? Oh, there's guilt. Oh, whoo, whoo. Almost didn't know who I was. All right, now I can think about my problems and all the people that are related to it. Oh, my goodness. We look for that feeling. So then, the moment we begin to draw our energy away from the old self, that is the David and Goliath. That is Gandalf on the bridge looking at the monster. And as you begin to take your attention off the old self, it demands a certain amount of your attention. And now you are beginning to abandon it, and you are taking your energy and bringing it back, and you're driving it to a new future. And that first couple steps into the river is where people have to decide if they want to cross or not. But then, if you're in the river, instead of white-knuckling it through the whole process, wouldn't you agree that it would be a good idea to think about what thoughts you do want to fire and wire in your brain? And could you begin to plan your behaviors and begin to rehearse who you're going to be when you open your eyes and begin to change your brain just by thought alone? To begin to eliminate the environment and the people and things and places and experiences in your world and make the inner world more real than the outer world, until your brain begins to change to look like the experience has already occurred. You're going to learn how to do this, and there are people around the world that are doing it, and they're doing the uncommon. And so then, as the body begins to crave the emotion that we become addicted to that defines us, and you are like an addict going through the cravings and the changes, don't you think that you could teach your body emotionally, without the experience, what abundance would feel like ahead of the event? Giving it a sampling of the future. Now, the materialist would say, well, I'm not going to give thanks till my lover shows up. And I'm not going to be in joy till my abundance, finally is in my checking account. That's the old model of reality, of cause and effect. Waiting for something outside of you to change how you feel inside of you. And when that person or that experience changes how you feel differently, and you pay attention to who caused it or what caused it. And that event in and of itself is called a memory. But that's the Newtonian model of reality. Our senses defining reality. But the quantum model of reality is beyond your senses. Which means then, you begin to emotionally embrace the event before it's made manifest. And you can convince your body emotionally that it's already occurred, and those emotions are driving a new set of thoughts. Then you would have to agree with me then. If you do that properly, your brain and body are no longer in the past. They're literally in the future. And if you can give thanks before the event occurred, oh my gosh. We've been hypnotized and conditioned into believing we need a reason for joy. We need a reason for gratitude. That's the old model. But the quantum model says, you give thanks before the event is made manifest, and you convince your body emotionally it's already done. Because what is the emotional signature of gratitude? Well, doesn't it mean it already happened? So if you're giving thanks, you move into a state of gratitude, your body, as the unconscious mind, begins to believe it's already done. And gratitude is the ultimate state of receivership. So then, if you're combining a clear intention with an elevated emotion, and you're in a new state of being, then you're literally signaling new genes in new ways before the event has occurred. And your body begins to change, as you'll learn this weekend, to look like the experience has occurred. You've already signaled the gene. The body's already in the future. And as a matter of fact, if you combine that model with the quantum model of reality, and you're observing that destiny, your body's going to be drawn to the event. So then, our senses should be the last to experience what our mind has created. And so then the materialist would wait for the event to occur to give thanks. But the quantum mind has already experienced it enough times that when their mind and body are in the future, they have a sense of knowingness. So taking philosophical knowledge, information, and initiating that information into your life to have an experience allows you to begin to experience the truth of that knowledge. And then ultimately, if you can re-experience it enough times, you begin to master it. You go from philosopher to initiate to master. And there are people around the world that are doing the uncommon right now. And we are in an amazing time. This is a time in history where it's not enough to know. This is a time in history to know how. And I can tell you from the movie What the Bleep, after it became an overnight sensation, the most common question that I heard over and over and over again was, how do you do it? And why is it so hard to change? Those are two questions I kept hearing over and over again. So then most people wait for crisis or trauma or disease or diagnosis or loss to finally decide to change. We have to be knocked to our knees when we finally say enough. And when we reach that point where we're in crisis, we no longer feel like ourselves, and that's the first time we could actually see ourselves. Because you're beginning to look at it through the eyes of someone else. But my message is, why wait? You know, you can learn and change in a state of pain and suffering, or you can learn and change in a state of joy and inspiration. Which would you choose? Now, the old model of reality that's been steeped in religion is that you have to suffer and you have to go through all the emotions along with it. And then it's time to change. But why not create the life you want in the state that you're in? So, after What the Bleep, we started teaching workshops around the world, not because I ever wanted to do it, but because people kept asking me, what do you do? And how do you do it? And so we taught these workshops for a year. And guess what happened? Nothing. I mean, some people had some changes, but it really wasn't amazing, you know? And I had to think, you know, if I was making a difference or not. And I don't know if I wasn't saying it well, or I just, you know, it wasn't being received. But after about a year, about 9-10 months, all of a sudden we started getting emails from people. And the first line of every email that we get is always the same. The very first line reads exactly the same. It reads, "You're not going to believe this. I actually applied this stuff and it works." And so we started seeing people heal themselves of different conditions, and it became exciting. And then we started to teach these other level workshops because people wanted to know more, and then more levels and more levels. And I never planned on doing any of this, to be honest with you. And we had an event in Colorado, and it was an advanced workshop, and the staff pulled me aside of the hotel, and they asked if I was handing out ecstasy on the breaks, you know. And so that particular event was very emotional for me because I started to witness transformation occur right in our workshop. And people were having a tremendous release of the emotions from the past. And so then at the end of that event, they said, "Come do another event." And I was like, I don't know anything else. And let's do another one. So we did another one. And